The rain tapping against the glass was almost melodic, too calm for what was unfolding inside the dining hall of my family's Colorado retreat. A place built for legacy, luxury, and silence. My silence. We were 6 at the table, but it felt like I was the only one not wearing armor. Across from me, my younger sister Sophia smirked just enough to pass it off as polite. My mother, Patricia Carter, raised a crystal glass. "To Sophia," she said, the corner of her mouth tightening in satisfaction for her loyalty, her ambition, and her future as the new face of Carter Crest. A thick envelope slid across the polished table toward Sophia. It thudded like a gavel. The deed, the company, the offshore accounts, all hers. I didn't react. 35 years old and somehow feeling like a 10-year-old left out of the family vacation. My palms were clammy beneath the table, pressed into the seams of my slacks. Sophia didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Her win had been rehearsed for years. Then came the final cut. "And you, Liam," my mother said, with a tilt of her head that made the chandelier light dance like knives. "You've always had your head in the clouds, running clinics in godforsaken countries, thinking kindness builds empires." She didn't need to say more. I knew this script. I'd been cast as the disappointment before I was old enough to spell CEO. A manila folder was passed to Evelyn Ross, our family attorney. She looked more uncomfortable than usual. Maybe it was the silence, or maybe she knew this was about to go sideways. "Let's just get this signed," my mother snapped, waving a manicured hand. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "don't do this." "Oh, please," she rolled her eyes. "You made your choice, Liam. You walked away. No title, no money, just some bleeding heart legacy you cling to. You never asked why I left," I said quietly. "You never cared, and I still don't," she shot back. "You left this family. Sophia stayed. Sophia earned this." I looked around. Daniel, my stepfather, suddenly fascinated by his water glass. Evelyn shifting papers. Sophia sitting pretty in victory. I had no allies, just silence, until Evelyn cleared her throat. "There's one more thing," she said. My mother's smile evaporated. "It's an amendment to the will. Sealed. Added 6 years ago by Ellis Carter." My heart stuttered. Grandfather. The only person who ever looked me in the eye and saw something more than weakness. "This better be a joke," Patricia hissed. "It's not," Evelyn said. "Mr. Ellis Carter retained majority ownership in Carter Crest until his passing, and he had the legal right to amend how that power transferred." Sophia shifted. Patricia went still. Daniel actually stopped swirling his water. Evelyn turned to me. "Liam, would you like to read it?" I nodded but didn't speak. She unfolded the yellowed page. Her voice was calm, steady. "In the event that my grandson Liam Carter is deemed unworthy by his mother, I hereby transfer full authority over my majority shares in Carter Crest Group to him, effective immediately. All voting rights are to shift upon activation of this clause. This amendment overrides any prior agreements concerning company leadership or inheritance." For a second, no one moved. Even the rain outside paused. Then Patricia stood, knocking her chair back with a screech. "This is absurd." Evelyn held firm. "It's binding. Nothing signed tonight can override it." I finally stood. My voice was low. "Maybe I don't know the business the way you wanted, but I know how to lead without destruction, to build without belittling, to serve without needing to be feared." Sophia's eyes narrowed. Patricia's jaw clenched so hard her temple twitched. I turned to Evelyn. "Let's proceed." And just like that, the room so carefully curated to crown my sister became the stage for something they didn't see coming. The prodigal son didn't return to ask for forgiveness. He returned with the key to the throne. Evelyn closed the folder with a quiet finality that echoed louder than any outburst. No one spoke, even Patricia, my mother. The woman who had built a corporate empire with her jaw clenched and her heart locked just stood there, stunned. For the first time in my life, her silence wasn't power. It was panic. Sophia, ever the performer, leaned back in her chair with forced calm, but her hands betrayed her fingers tightening around the envelope, as if it could somehow protect her from what had just unraveled. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Power doesn't have to shout. It just has to stand still while the rest of the room loses its footing. Are you telling me, Patricia finally growled, that this child has control? Evelyn's voice didn't flinch. Majority control. Yes. He doesn't even understand the company. Maybe not your version of it, I said, steady now. But I know how to run something built on purpose, not fear. I turned to Evelyn again. Let's move forward. Sophia shifted, about to protest but stopped. Maybe she knew it would look desperate. Or maybe she was already planning her next move. With Sophia, silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Patricia stayed frozen in place, her knuckles white on the edge of her abandoned chair. She didn't sit back down. She just stared at the floor like she'd dropped something she couldn't admit was gone. We signed the new acknowledgement. Evelyn handed me a second envelope. Your grandfather wanted this delivered only if this moment came to pass, she said. Inside was a small leather box. Familiar, worn. My grandfather's old compass. The one he'd carry on every hike and business trip like some quiet promise to always find true north. Beneath it, a letter in his handwriting. Liam, if you're reading this, your mother did exactly what I feared. But don't waste your breath on anger. She was built by a world that rewarded control and punished softness. You were never weak. You were the steady hand in the storm. This compass is yours now, because no matter what path you take, I trust you to lead. Ellis, my throat tightened, not from sentimentality, but from something deeper, a feeling I hadn't had in years. Belief. His belief in me. You think this makes you powerful? Patricia snapped suddenly. Her voice was cold again, trying to reassert control. You think he gave you this to honor you? No, he did it to punish me. I met her gaze. For once, I didn't look away. No, I said quietly. He did it because he knew I wouldn't burn everything down just to feel in charge. I left the room without waiting for another rebuttal. Let them process the new balance. Let them sit in the silence they had carved around me for decades. But the moment I stepped out into the corridor, footsteps echoed behind me. Liam, Sophia called out. Calm voice. Calculated expression. I turned. You don't have to do this, she said, trying for something that sounded like reason. You could keep me on. We could run this together. I studied her. You mean the company you tried to steal? She didn't blink. I didn't steal anything. I earned it. I stayed. I fought for it and skimmed millions through shell companies registered under fake names. I replied flatly. Sophia's smile twitched. Careful, big brother, she said. You just walked in here with a moral compass and a signature. But this world, it doesn't run on ideals. It runs on strategy. I leaned in, close enough for her to feel it. Then consider this your warning, I said. The days of fear-based leadership are over. She chuckled. 2 months, Liam. That's all you'll last before this place eats you alive. Then I'll bleed on my own terms, I replied. But I won't bleed anyone else dry to keep my seat. Her eyes narrowed, but she turned away without another word. But I watched the way her shoulders stayed stiff, her fists clenched just a little too tightly. That wasn't surrender. That was the beginning of a counterattack. The first few days back at Carter Crest were quiet. Too quiet. Not the peaceful kind, more like the eerie calm before a power outage. You know it's coming. You just don't know what will go dark first. I didn't come in with fanfare. No grand speech. No symbolic firing of executives. Just a plain navy suit and a nameplate outside the CEO's office that hadn't been dusted in a while. The receptionist glanced up when I walked in, did a double take, then quickly stood. Mr. Carter? Just Liam's fine, I said. I'm not here to perform. She blinked. That's new. And it was. Everything about me being there was a disruption. No parade. No posturing. Just a man with a key card and a signed amendment that had shifted an empire. But empires don't shift easily. Not really. At first, they resist you with silence. Then they try to smother you with noise. By day 3, I noticed the fractures. Departments operating in silos. Memos contradicting one another. Promotion charts based on who had drinks with Sophia, not who met deadlines. And the break room? A dead zone. The kind where conversation dies the second you walk in. One afternoon, I stepped inside to grab a coffee. The hum of vending machines was the only sound. 4 employees froze mid-sentence. I raised a hand, tried to ease the tension. Don't stop on my account. You're on break. Be on break. A man in maintenance gear, maybe late 50s, glanced at the others, then stood. We weren't allowed to sit if Miss Sophia walked in, he muttered. I blinked. That changes today. His name was Marco. Turned out, he'd worked there for nearly 30 years. The kind of quiet employee who sees everything because no one ever notices him watching. He started staying late after hours, accidentally leaving reports on my desk. One night I found a sticky note in my inbox. Check page 14, and don't trust the expense report from marketing. He was right. Page 14 revealed a chain of shady supplier contracts, shell corporations, duplicate vendor IDs, expenses for campaigns that didn't exist. That's when I knew. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was rot, and rot spreads. Sophia hadn't just manipulated the boardroom, she'd redesigned the entire internal culture to benefit her control. Loyalty was the new currency. Anyone who asked questions got labeled a disruption, and those who refused to play along, terminated, quietly, efficiently, just enough red tape to make it look like budget cuts. I stayed late that night, combing through internal emails. Then came the folder, delivered in person. Sophia, in heels sharp enough to qualify as weapons, dropped it onto my desk like she was throwing down a gauntlet. You want the seat? She said. Let's see you survive it. Inside were screenshots, emails, spliced video stills, photos of me poorly edited sitting in meetings I'd never attended, messages I'd supposedly sent to charity partners, requesting personal payments, a complete fabrication designed to look like embezzlement from nonprofit funds. These are fake, I said calmly, flipping through them. Her smile was razor thin. Can you prove it? This is a felony. So's being a fraud, she replied. You really want to destroy me? I asked. No, she hissed, voice suddenly lower, colder. I want what's mine. You were never supposed to win this, Liam. I stood, slowly. Not threatening, just steady. I'm not here to win, I said. I'm here to repair what you broke. She tilted her head like I was speaking a foreign language. This isn't a clinic. It's a battlefield. No, I said, matching her gaze. It's a platform. And I'm going to use it to rebuild, not reign. Sophia walked out, but she didn't slam the door. She didn't need to. The damage was already loaded onto USB drives, ready to leak. By the next morning, headlines hit. Breaking, Carter Crest's new CEO, accused of charity fraud family feud, at the helm of billion-dollar empire legacy or liability. The rise of Liam Carter. It didn't matter that the accusations were false. The internet doesn't wait for facts. My inbox exploded. Journalists, shareholders, PR firms offering crisis strategy packages that cost more than I made in a year overseas. People whispered my name like it was a cautionary tale. He walked in with ethics. Let's see how long that lasts. And I'll be honest, I broke. Not publicly, not with yelling or spiraling tweets, but alone, on the office couch at midnight, eyes red, shoulders hollow. I wasn't crying because of the rumors. I was crying because part of me, the part that still wanted to believe in integrity, had started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, My mother had been right. Maybe I didn't belong in this world. Then there was a knock. Soft. Hesitant. Marco stepped in holding a paper cup. "Thought you could use this," he said. "You didn't have to. No one ever brought me anything when I cried in here," he replied. "So maybe it's time we break the cycle." That line stuck with me. Break the cycle. Not revenge, not retaliation, just redirection. "You want to know the truth about your family?" he asked. I nodded. "I've been here longer than most of them have been alive," he said. "I saw how your grandfather looked at you. How he smiled when you asked questions no one else bothered with. You think people don't notice that kind of thing, but we do. Why help me? Because someone helped me once," he said. "And because this place doesn't need another tyrant." He handed me a folder. Inside were internal reports, whistleblower emails that had been flagged and buried. More names of employees who had spoken up and were let go. I looked up. "You kept all this?" He shrugged. "I don't throw away the truth." The next morning, I walked into the boardroom. I let them talk. Accusations, demands, threats of resignation. Then I dropped my own folder on the table. Real reports, real numbers, real damage, and a final flash drive. Sophia, late at night, entering a restricted office, plugging in a USB, time-stamped perfectly, with the documents she claimed I'd written. The boardroom went quiet. Then I spoke. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came to heal what was broken. But healing doesn't mean silence. It means truth. So here it is. Sophia wasn't fired. She was suspended, pending full investigation." The board agreed unanimously. And for the first time, the word Carter didn't feel like a weight on my back. It felt like a name I could carry with intention. The press didn't care that the documents were fake. The truth might win in court, but it didn't trend on social media. Overnight, I became a punchline in business gossip blogs and late-night talk show segments. Carter Crest's do-gooder CEO, doomed good. Someone even made a meme with my face and the caption, "When your moral compass is actually a GPS to financial disaster." Cute. I wasn't worried about my ego. I'd left that in a jungle hospital years ago. But perception? Perception could crush a company faster than mismanagement. Shareholders started pulling out. Staff froze, unsure whether to trust me or brace for another regime change. And through it all, Sophia was nowhere to be seen. No press release, no apology, just radio silence, which, in her case, was never a retreat. It was the sound of someone preparing to strike harder. Behind the scenes, I worked with Evelyn and a private audit team. We combed through every dollar spent, every bonus paid, every consultant that had mysteriously disappeared after getting a six-figure check. The findings were worse than expected. Departments had been manipulated to compete against each other. Bonuses were handed out like bribes. Entire initiatives were fabricated to funnel money through fake vendors. And all of it was designed to collapse quietly once the throne was secure. Carter Crest didn't need a new CEO. It needed a reckoning. Still, I refused to hold a press conference. No dramatic speeches. Just steady actions. I let the numbers speak louder than any headline ever could. But sometimes even the truth needs a little help to land. That help came in the form of Marco again, who walked into my office with another folder and a list of names. "What's this?" I asked. "A list of everyone your mother let go," he said quietly, "for telling the truth." Each name came with a date. Each date aligned with a moment of internal challenge project leads who questioned inflated budgets, HR managers who refused to sign off on sudden dismissals. "I thought you'd want them back," Marco said. "I did more than that. I signed off on personal invitations to each of them, not as an apology, not as a PR stunt, just an acknowledgement. They didn't deserve exile for telling the truth, and maybe, just maybe, that was what would set this company apart from every legacy that came before." 2 weeks later, I met Sophia for the first time since the boardroom. She asked to meet at a neutral location, a rooftop bar downtown. The kind with $40 cocktails and enough glass to reflect every version of ourselves we were pretending to be. She arrived late, in a charcoal suit that screamed control. Her eyes, though, didn't sparkle the way they used to. "So," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Here we are." I nodded. "Here we are. You didn't have to suspend me. You didn't have to try to ruin me," I replied. She looked away, then laughed softly. Not amused, just tired. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I didn't even do it for the company." I tilted my head. "Then why?" "Because I wanted to be seen," she whispered. "All those years, it was always Liam the heart. Liam who helped. Liam who served. I had results, numbers, but he smiled at you." She meant grandfather. I felt something shift, not pity, but understanding. We weren't enemies. We were just survivors of the same system, shaped by it differently. "I never wanted your place," I said. "I wanted space to matter in a way that didn't require sacrificing who I am." She smiled. "Barely." "You got it," she said. Then she stood. "No apology?" I asked. "No," she said. "Just the truth. Maybe that's enough." She walked away, heels clicking like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence. Back at the office, things began to breathe again. Staff started looking me in the eye. Marco took his break without pretending he wasn't. Evelyn smiled more. The energy was changing, not louder, just lighter. One morning, I opened a letter. No return address. Inside was a single donation receipt, 7 figures made in my name to the humanitarian clinic I once worked at overseas. No note, just a familiar scrawl at the bottom of the form. Patricia. It wasn't a peace treaty, but it was something. Later that week, Evelyn stopped by my office. "You know," she said, "Ellis didn't leave you that compass because he thought you were perfect. He left it because he knew you'd use it when things got lost. I've been lost more times than I can count." "Exactly," she said. "That's how you know where not to go again." I kept the compass on my desk after that, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Not every leader needs to be loud. Sometimes the quiet ones leave the deepest mark. And just like that, we turned the ship. No scandals, no bloodshed, just the slow, quiet undoing of generations of damage. Legacy, I learned, isn't what you build when the world's watching. It's what remains when the room empties, and your name still makes people feel seen. A month passed. Not much changed on the surface. The building still smelled like overbrewed coffee and toner ink. The morning elevator ride still carried a polite silence, but the air felt different. Not heavier, just awake. People no longer looked over their shoulders before speaking. No more quiet whispers behind closed doors. The tension had loosened its grip, like an old coat finally shrugged off. Sophia hadn't returned to the office. Not officially. Her suspension remained in place, and she hadn't challenged it. But a few days after our rooftop conversation, she sent a short email. No hard feelings. Maybe that's the problem. We were never taught how to feel. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence says more than a reply ever could. But one voice still hadn't spoken. My mother. Not a word. Not a letter. No corporate retaliation. No subtle attempts to reclaim control. Just a void. And I kept expecting it to be filled by rage, guilt, indignation, anything. But it remained quiet. Until one Sunday. I came in early, old habit. There was peace in the stillness of a sleeping office. No emails. No phones. Just the soft whir of HVAC and the city breathing outside. And then I saw her, Patricia, sitting in the chair across from my desk, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes on the compass. She looked older, not in the cosmetic sense, but in the way shadows cling a little longer to someone who's lived too long without stepping into the light. "I had to see it," she said. "The compass?" I asked. "No," she said, "that you didn't burn it all down." I didn't answer right away. She stood slowly, walked over to the window. This company was everything to me. she said. Legacy. Power. Proof that I wasn't weak, that I mattered. I never wanted to take that from you, but you did, she said, because I made it about control, not connection. She turned to me, eyes dull. You were right. About Sophia. About how this place forgot what it was built for. I studied her. No defenses. No sarcasm. Just a woman standing in the quiet ruins of her own empire, realizing she was the one who'd drawn the blueprint. Why now? I asked. She pulled something from her coat pocket. A photograph. Me and grandfather. I was 12. Covered in paint from a mural project he helped me with. He was laughing. Wild and unfiltered. Patricia must have taken the picture. He said you'd change this family, she whispered. I just didn't want to believe it. If I did, I said gently, it's because he believed in me. She nodded, then hesitated. I came to say something I should have said a long time ago. She met my eyes, voice almost breaking. I'm sorry, Liam, for everything. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant, like I'd finally won. But all I felt was the soft ache of a wound I didn't realize had scabbed over without healing. Thank you, I said. I just needed to hear it once. She smiled faintly. I don't expect forgiveness. Then don't ask for it, I said. Just fix what you can, while there's still time. She nodded, placed the photo on my desk, and left without another word. I didn't call her back, but 2 weeks later, I received another envelope. Inside, a 7-figure donation receipt. The beneficiary? A women's recovery center in rural Kenya, the one I'd volunteered at for 6 years. No note, no signature, but the message was loud enough. She was trying. That was more than I ever expected. Spring came quietly. We didn't do a ribbon cutting or hire brand consultants. Instead, we rehired 10 of the whistleblowers who had been wrongfully terminated. We funded employee wellness programs. Department heads began collaborating instead of competing. And I got an email from Sophia. Coffee, just coffee, no agendas. We met at a small cafe near the river. No suits, no tension, just 2 siblings sitting across from each other. For once, not trying to win. No apologies, no digging up graves, just conversation. We talked about childhood, about grandfather's Sunday hikes, about how strange it was to both be leaders, and yet still feel like we were figuring it all out. Maybe that was enough. That same week, Marco dropped off a folder on my desk. What's this? I asked. He smiled. Final list. It was a full list of everyone who had been let go under the old regime, their positions, their termination reasons. And next to each one, a blank line for a signature. I signed each letter personally, not to erase the past, but to offer something the company had long forgotten how to give, grace. Not one of them was required to come back. No strings, just an invitation. Some returned, some didn't, but every reply felt like a thread being re-sewn into something whole again. Now, when I walk through the halls of Carter Crest, people don't stiffen, they nod. Some smile, some wave. The whispers are gone, not because I silenced them, but because I no longer needed to prove myself to anyone who thought I didn't belong. One morning, I passed a new intern in the hallway. He looked nervous, clutching a stack of files like they were shields. I paused. You okay? He nodded. Just. First week nerves. Want some advice? He nodded again. Speak up, even if your voice shakes. He blinked. That's allowed. It is now, I said. And if anyone tells you otherwise, send them to my office. He smiled. Not big, but real. That was it. That was the legacy. Not power, not control, but the feeling someone carries after they walk away from a room you were in. If it's lighter, warmer, safer, you've already changed the world. Story 2. I should have known things were going south when my mother-in-law, Karen, pitched a tantrum on our living room floor over a new phone. I'm Ethan, 32. I've been married to Marissa for 4 years. Her mom, Karen, is a lot. And by a lot, I mean the kind of person who thinks a 2-year-old phone is ancient and expects someone else, me, specifically to fund her tech upgrades. When I said no to buying her a new one, she literally dropped to the hardwood floor and started pounding her fists like a toddler at Target. I didn't cave, so she left in a huff, saying, "Fine, I'll get it myself." That should have been the end of it. Instead, it was the start of something I still can't believe actually happened. I have a vintage skeleton key collection, real iron and brass relics from the 1800s and early 1900s. Some I found at estate sales, others I bid on through collectors' forums. It took me nearly a decade to build, and I kept the whole thing in a locked glass display case in my office. It wasn't just about the value, though. Sure, it was worth several $1,000s. It was the time, the care, the story in every piece. A few days after Karen's meltdown, I got home from work to find the display cabinet broken open and the entire collection gone. My stomach dropped. First, I thought maybe we'd been robbed. Then I checked our security camera, and there she was, Karen, my mother-in-law, on camera prying the cabinet open with a crowbar like she was cracking a safe in a heist movie. I couldn't believe it. I called her immediately. She didn't even deny it. "I sold them," she said flatly. "I needed money for the phone. You didn't get it for me, so I figured this way I could buy one myself." She even laughed about it, mocked my collection, called it junk. I was shaking. I demanded to know where she sold them. "Pawn shop on Oak Street. Got $300. Not bad, huh?" She gloated, like she'd scored a deal. I wanted to scream. Those keys were worth thousands. When I told Marissa what happened, at first she looked horrified. But the moment I said I was calling the police, she flipped. "Ethan, please don't. She's my mom. We can just start over, build a new collection." No, absolutely not. She expected me to pretend it didn't happen? Let Karen walk away with what amounted to grand theft, just because we're related by marriage? No way. Marissa and I had a long, loud argument. She told me I was overreacting. I told her this wasn't the first time Karen had crossed a line, just the first time I wasn't going to let it slide. I said I'd be changing the locks and banning Karen from our home. If Marissa didn't want to go to counseling to work through her enabling behavior, I'd be calling a divorce attorney. She didn't even try to argue, just stared at me coldly, packed a bag, and walked out. I didn't stop her. By that evening, I'd filed a report. I had video evidence, screenshots of Karen's texts bragging about the theft, and a full inventory of the stolen keys. To my surprise, the cops took it seriously. I'd been bracing for them to write it off as a family dispute. Instead, they arrested Karen within hours. I didn't feel good about it, but I did feel justified. 2 days later, the police returned my collection miraculously intact. The pawn shop owner had handed over the entire box once they showed the footage and explained the situation. He wasn't happy to be involved and apparently made it clear none of us were welcome back. Fair enough. But then, of course, came the next punch in the gut. Marissa bailed her mom out, with our joint bank account, without asking me. When I told her I wasn't going to reimburse her, she snapped, said I owed her since I got her mother arrested. I checked the account. She'd withdrawn over $1,000. That was well over what bail cost and way more than Karen got from the pawn shop. That's when it clicked. Marissa had also gone to the pawn shop and repaid them herself. She used our money to fix what her mom broke, but never once apologized to me. Worse, when I confronted her at the motel she'd holed up in, she slammed the door in my face after smugly saying, "That's your karma, Ethan." So, I changed the locks the next day, closed the joint account, froze all auto payments, pulled my share, and left just enough to avoid overdraft. I was done being played. After I changed the locks, I sent Marissa a text. Nothing dramatic, just a heads up that her key no longer worked, and her mother was no longer welcome in the house. Simple, direct, fair. She didn't respond. So when she finally came back, probably thinking I'd cave or forgot to follow through. She was greeted by a locked door and a deadbolt that didn't recognize her anymore. She pounded on the door for a good 5 minutes, yelling, calling me names, demanding I let her in. I just watched her through the doorbell camera from my phone while sitting on the couch, sipping coffee. Eventually, she called. I answered, calmly. The first texted you. The locks are changed. She stood there, stunned. Didn't even try to argue. Just stood there like she didn't know what to do now. When I did let her in out of decency, not obligation, her face was red, puffy, like she'd been crying in the car the whole ride over. But still, no apology. I handed her a new key and said one thing. If you make a copy and give it to your mother again, I'm done being polite. That'll be the last straw. She didn't say much, just nodded. And for a moment, it felt like maybe she understood how serious I was. But it didn't last. Karen, of course, played the victim immediately. Told everyone who'd listen that I was some monster who locked her out and ruined her life over some junky old keys. What she didn't mention, she smashed my cabinet, pawned my collection for next to nothing, and laughed while doing it. I told Marissa the first was going to keep pursuing charges. That woman committed a felony. I don't care if she's family. If she'd been a stranger, everyone would be telling me to press charges. So why should I let it slide just because she gave birth to my wife? Marissa didn't take that well. She started sleeping in the guest room and acting like I was the one tearing the family apart. But I wasn't budging. When she tried to take over the master bedroom, I blocked the doorway and told her no. I wasn't going to be kicked out of my own bed because she didn't want to face the consequences of her mother's actions. She cried, said I was being cruel. I said I was setting boundaries, something she clearly didn't know how to do with Karen. Then came the real kicker. She admitted flat out, admitted that before this mess, she'd been planning to move her mom in with us, behind my back, while I was at work. That hit me like a freight train. All the times she promised me we'd have our own space, start a family, build something together. All lies. She was going to ambush me with a permanent roommate who steals, lies, and thinks a tantrum is a negotiation tactic. So I laid it out, plain and clear. Your mother will not be living here. If you try it, I'll throw her stuff on the lawn. That night, she poured herself a drink and locked herself in the kitchen for a dramatic phone call with Karen. I didn't listen in. I didn't need to. I already knew where she stood. A few days later, I had divorce papers served to her at work. It wasn't meant to humiliate her, but I needed to make it real. She didn't believe me when I told her I was done. Maybe she thought I was bluffing. Maybe she thought I'd forgive and forget, like I'd always done. This time, I followed through. When she got home, she threw the papers on the counter and started yelling, "You can't do this." "I already did," I said. She started crying again, claimed I was ruining our marriage. I just stared at her and said, "No, your loyalty to your mother did that." That seemed to finally hit her, but not enough to change anything. She didn't apologize. She didn't even ask what she could do to fix it. She just doubled down, said she had to stand by her mom because she's all I've ever had. And that's the thing. I was never going to be enough. No matter how much I gave, how hard I tried, I was always going to be second place to a woman who'd never once respected me. So yeah, I filed. And I felt a little more free the moment I did. I started apartment hunting right away. Told the landlord I wasn't renewing the lease and filled them in on the situation. They weren't thrilled about Marissa giving Karen a key without asking. I warned them that she might try to move Karen in after I left. They thanked me and said they'd keep an eye on things. Meanwhile, Marissa kept trying to pull power moves. She tried to guilt trip me, cook for me, even threw on lingerie like it was a magic wand. But I didn't bite. That ship had sailed. I told her I didn't trust her anymore, not with money, not with my belongings, and definitely not with my heart. She cried again, said I was being cruel. I said, "You killed the marriage the second you chose her over me. Now you're just mad I'm walking away." I don't know what she expected. A heartfelt reunion? A slow dance in the ruins? Nah. I was packing my bags. I'd already found a small one-bedroom place closer to work. Cheaper, quieter, mine. Soon I'd be gone. After that last fight, Marissa stopped pretending. She wasn't cooking anymore, wasn't trying to seduce me or play nice. She just started drinking more, sleeping in late, slamming doors for punctuation. The house felt like a war zone, but no one was throwing punches, just silence and sharp looks. I slept with the bedroom door locked. Something in my gut told me not to trust her anymore. And that feeling, it stuck. Then I remembered something. A comment someone left online when I shared what happened. They suggested reporting Karen for hoarding. At the time, I'd brushed it off, figured it was too much. But now, after everything she'd done, I was done protecting her, so I made a call, used a throwaway number, reported the house anonymously. Just said it needed to be looked into. Told them it was likely a fire hazard. That was all. I didn't expect much to come of it. Weeks went by. And then, boom. Marissa came home one night red-faced and shaking. She dropped her purse, slammed the door, and started yelling. "You reported my mom, didn't you?" She didn't wait for an answer. She already knew. The city had inspected Karen's house. Turns out it wasn't just a little cluttered, it was a full-blown health hazard. Rodents, black mold, structural damage, garbage so old the floorboards were starting to rot underneath. And the best part? Exposed wires and a leaking roof. That place wasn't just gross, it was dangerous. Apparently, Karen broke down crying when they told her she might lose it. Started blaming everyone but herself. But mostly, she blamed me. Marissa screamed at me for destroying her mother's life. I stared at her for a long moment and then asked the one question that had been on my mind for weeks. What about mine? What about the life your mother tried to destroy? That shut her up for a minute, but only a minute. A few days later, Karen demanded Marissa help pay for the repairs. She wanted her daughter, my wife, soon-to-be ex, to cover the cost of cleaning and restoring the house. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Karen, who lived off disability and scraps, wanted us to clean up her decades of rot. Marissa told her she couldn't afford it. Karen flipped. From what I heard later, she attacked Marissa, scratched her, pulled her hair, screamed in her face like some kind of wild animal. And right in the middle of that breakdown, Karen dropped to the floor. Heart attack. Marissa called 911 while frantically searching the trash piles for aspirin. But by the time the ambulance got there, Karen was gone. When Marissa came home that night, she wasn't yelling. She was crying. But not the kind of crying that asks for comfort. The kind that spits blame between sobs. "This is your fault," she said, standing in the doorway with a police officer behind her. "She's dead because of you." And yeah, that hit me hard, even though I knew deep down I hadn't caused it. Even though I knew she'd been playing with fire for years, in that house full of mold and garbage and stress. Even though I'd tried, time and time again, to set boundaries. Still, guilt sank into my chest like cold water. I couldn't breathe for a second. I didn't want her dead. I just wanted peace. But there we were. Marissa didn't stay the night. She packed a bag and went back to a motel. Left the bathroom trashed, vomit in the sink, wine bottles scattered across the floor. The next morning, I cleaned up in silence. Didn't cry, didn't yell. Just scrubbed and swept. Like I was washing away the last pieces of a life I never really got to live. A few days later, I took sick leave. Couldn't focus at work. The stress was eating me alive, and the migraines were making it impossible to think straight. I spent a few days on the couch, drifting between sleep and anger, between Netflix and flashbacks. Eventually, I pulled myself together. Because there was still one thing left to do. I finalized everything. I gave notice to the landlord. Utilities, internet, everything. I set the shut-off date. Marissa would have to find her own place. I didn't care where. I packed up the essentials and left behind anything that didn't spark joy or wasn't mine to begin with. Even got myself a storage unit so I could start moving things before the apartment was ready. And the new place was nothing fancy. One bedroom, needs a little paint, but it's mine. Closer to work. No drama. No screaming. No broken locks or manipulative moms waiting to sneak through the door. Just quiet. And quiet. Quiet is priceless. March rolled in quiet, gray, and damp. I was counting down the days till I could move out. I'd found a used bike online, nothing special, just something with working gears and no rust. I hadn't ridden one since college, but I needed something that reminded me of freedom. That first ride? Whined in my face, no voices behind me. Just the sound of tires on pavement and breath in my chest. It felt like starting over. Back at the house, Marissa wasn't handling things well. She drank more, argued less. That scared me, honestly. She wasn't even trying to fight anymore. Just floated around the house like a ghost. One night, I walked past her on the way to the kitchen, and she muttered, "It wasn't supposed to end like this." I didn't answer. What was there to say? Maybe it wasn't supposed to end like this, but this is what happens when people ignore the truth for too long. The weight of denial has to land somewhere. In our case, it landed like a wrecking ball. The final week before I moved out, she tried one last time. Made a homemade dinner, something she hadn't done since we were still pretending we were happy. Steak, potatoes, a bottle of wine on the table, candle burning in the middle like we were playing house again. I sat down, stared at the plate, then looked at her. "Why now?" She shrugged. "Because I don't know how else to fix this. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I just said, 'You can't fix something you kept breaking.'" That night, she cried herself to sleep on the couch. I locked my door and stared at the ceiling until morning. The move was quiet. I didn't even tell her what day I'd be leaving. Just packed the last of my things into a rental van and closed the door behind me. She wasn't home when I left. Just as well. I took the bed from the guest room, some kitchen stuff, and a few photos I'd taken on hikes. Left the furniture, the dishes, the decor. Let her keep the house like she kept the memories scattered and half broken. I left the keys on the counter and shut the door gently behind me. Didn't look back, didn't need to. The new apartment smelled like paint and dust. It was quiet, cold, and empty, but it was mine. I slept on the floor the first night, under a blanket, with my duffel bag as a pillow. Still, I slept better than I had in months. I started setting things up slowly. Brought in the key collection, first locked it away in a fireproof case, tucked safely into a closet only I had the key to. No one was going to touch those again, not without going through me. About 2 weeks after I left, I got a text from Marissa. It just said, "I'm sorry for all of it." I stared at the screen for a long time. Didn't respond. There wasn't anger in me anymore, just exhaustion. You can't build a life with someone who refuses to pick you first. And love? Love doesn't survive on apologies. Not when they come too late. A few days later, I heard through a mutual friend that she'd moved in with her cousin. She wasn't doing great. Still drinking. Still blaming me. Sometimes. But sometimes, she admitted the truth. That's her road now. I won't walk it for her. As for Karen, there was no funeral. No obituary. Just a small box of ashes and a notice from the city saying the house was being condemned. All that hoarding, all that anger, all that control, and in the end, the house she held on to like a throne was the same thing that took her down. Some say karma is a wheel, but I think it's more like gravity. You throw enough weight around, eventually it comes crashing back on you. These days, life is smaller, but it's also quieter. I ride my bike to work. I cook for myself. I sleep through the night. I listen to music in the evenings without worrying about slamming doors or passive-aggressive sighs from the next room. Freedom doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes, it just feels like walking into a home and knowing this is yours. All of it. The silence, the peace, the stillness. I don't miss my marriage. I miss the version of it I thought I had. But that version was a lie. A soft, spoken dream hiding years of slowly eroding trust. And now, I have something better. Clarity. If there's a lesson in all this, maybe it's this. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-erasure. And when someone shows you over and over again that you come second, believe them. I used to think walking away meant giving up. Now I know it means choosing yourself. And for the first time in years, I finally feel whole. Story 3. Have you ever met someone so useless, so infuriatingly smug, that just breathing the same air as them made you question the entire concept of forgiveness? Yeah, meet Darren, my sister's husband. Or as I now refer to him, the human equivalent of a mosquito stuck on autoplay. Last weekend was our monthly family cookout. Ever since my dad's health scare last year, minor heart attack, major wake-up call, we've made these backyard gatherings a thing. A way to stay close, to remind each other that we're still a unit. I'm Nate, 33, and my stepsister Claire is 29. Claire's always been the glue in this weird patchwork of a family. She's a nurse, the kind that can joke around with a trauma patient while cleaning a wound. Tough, kind, and stubborn to a fault. And then there's Darren, 32, her husband of 4 years, serial job dodger, king of excuses. He hasn't shown up to a cookout in months, always had a job interview or some urgent networking opportunity. So when he actually walked into my parents' backyard this time, I knew something was off. Claire looked wrecked. She was still in her scrubs, hair in a messy bun that wasn't even trying anymore, and she was moving like her limbs were made of bricks. Darren, meanwhile, was glued to his phone like he was the CEO of Earth. He didn't greet anyone, didn't even look up when my mom offered him a plate of ribs, just mumbled something about already ate, and kept scrolling like the world owed him likes and validation. Claire helped set up. She flipped burgers, poured drinks, and took plates back inside like she was running a diner solo. Every few minutes, her eyes flicked toward Darren, anxious, embarrassed, like she was hoping he'd suddenly morph into a functioning adult. When she slipped inside for more lemonade, I followed, and that's when it cracked. She didn't say anything at first, just stood in the kitchen, back to me, shoulders heaving. I asked her if she was okay. She turned around and collapsed into tears, the kind that come from weeks, months of pretending everything's fine when nothing is. They were 3 months behind on rent. Darren hadn't applied to a single job in weeks, despite telling everyone otherwise. Claire was working 14, 16-hour shifts, coming home to piles of dishes, unpaid bills, and Darren passed out on the couch with a game controller on his chest. And she had told no one, not mom, not dad, not even me. She was terrified it would stress dad out. She was ashamed, and that's the part that broke me the most. Claire has always been the one who had it together. She carried our family through more than once. Seeing her like this, it lit a fuse in me I didn't even know was still there. I knew a guy, my friend Julian. He owns a construction company, pays well, offers training, full benefits. They're always hiring. I figured maybe Darren just needs a real shot. Maybe someone has to show him a door and make it idiot-proof. So, I did. I waited until he was alone, still hunched over his phone in the corner of the patio like some neglected houseplant. I approached carefully, low stakes, casual. Hey man, how's the job hunt going? He gave me this half-hearted shrug and mumbled something about waiting to hear back. I dropped Julian's name, explained the offer, benefits, no experience needed. Just show up and work hard. That's when he looked up. His entire face changed. Manual labor? He scoffed. Dude, I'm not desperate. I'm not lowering myself to that level. That level? I blinked. I thought I misheard him, but he kept going, ranting about how that kind of work was for uneducated people. His words, not mine. I lost it. Not in a yelling way, just a cold, biting truth kind of way. I told him that honest work is better than no work, that his wife was breaking her back to keep a roof over their heads while he played Call of Duty and dodged adulthood. That's when Darren exploded, jumped up, got right in my face, started screaming about how I was trying to humiliate him, that I've always looked down on him, that I think I'm better than him because I went to a fancy college. For the record, I went to community college and worked full-time through it. Claire ran out when she heard the shouting. I expected naively that she'd back me up, that she'd finally let the truth surface, but she turned on me, said I didn't understand, that Darren was trying his best, that I was making things worse. Within minutes, they stormed out, Claire in tears, Darren triumphant. The BBQ ended early. Everyone quiet. My parents pulled me aside and ripped into me about picking the wrong time and making Darren feel small. Apparently, Claire told them Darren was working with a career coach and had several leads. All lies. 3 days later, I still feel like I detonated a bomb I didn't mean to set off. It wasn't always like this. Claire came into my life when we were kids. My dad remarried when I was 12 and she was 9. We weren't blood, but she was my sister. We clicked immediately. Bonded over losing a parent, over figuring out how to be a family again. She used to be so alive, confident. She'd call me after acing exams or when one of her patients made her laugh. But since Darren lost his job 2 years ago, I've watched that light fade. At first, it seemed like bad luck. Darren said his company downsized. Claire believed in him, picked up extra shifts, covered their bills. She said he just needed time, but time passed, and Darren stayed jobless. Every excuse was new and creative. The market sucks. The positions aren't a good fit. They're not paying what I'm worth. Meanwhile, Claire worked 60-hour weeks, skipped family dinners, lost weight, smiled less. Mutual friends started whispering things. Darren spotted at casinos, at bars in the middle of the day, buying rounds, laughing it up while Claire ran herself into the ground. I tried telling my parents. They brushed it off, said Darren was grieving his career, or whatever, that Claire would speak up if she needed help. But she didn't. She never does. That's who she is. Until that day in the kitchen when everything cracked. Now I'm the villain. Claire texted me the day after the BBQ. A long message about how I destroyed months of progress. That Darren was about to turn things around and I ruined it. Mom called, told me to apologize. That Darren was sensitive and I made things worse. Even my wife, who usually sides with me, said maybe I chose the wrong moment. But I can't get Claire's face out of my mind. Her tears, her exhaustion, her shaking hands clutching that lemonade pitcher. Everyone else is pretending this is fine, but it's not. And I don't know how to help her without setting everything on fire. 2 weeks. That's how long it's been since I tried to help, and somehow ended up cast as the villain in my own family. And in those 14 days, everything has spiraled harder than I ever thought possible. Claire still wasn't talking to me. Not even a hey or a middle finger emoji. Just silence. And honestly, that silence hurt more than if she'd yelled at me again. I kept playing back the kitchen moment over and over. Her shoulders shaking, voice cracking, finally telling the truth after carrying so much alone. And now, gone. Like it never happened. The worst part? I was starting to doubt myself. Maybe I had pushed too hard. Maybe I should have waited. But every time that thought crept in, I remembered how tired she looked, how scared, and how fast Darren twisted the entire narrative the second I opened my mouth. I knew I had to try something. Not for Darren, screw that guy, but for Claire. I got Darren's current location from my mom. Apparently, after another blowout argument about money, Claire told him to stay with his buddy, Marcus, for a while. Mom said he needed time to clear his head. Right. I showed up at Marcus's place around 7 p.m. It was exactly what you'd expect. Loud music, beer cans on the porch, the faint smell of something that definitely wasn't just weed drifting in the air. I knocked. Music turned down. Someone shuffled to the door. Darren opened it, shirt stained, reeking of booze, eyes bloodshot. He smirked when he saw me. "Oh, look, Mr. Perfect. I kept my cool. Said I just wanted to talk, to clear the air." He waved me in like he owned the place. The place was trashed. Takeout boxes everywhere. Empty bottles on every surface. But what caught my eye were the slips on the coffee table, gambling stubs, betting receipts, and a few casino player cards. I sat on the edge of a chair. Darren flopped onto the couch and launched into a full-blown rant. You think I don't see it? The way Claire looks at you? The way everyone compares us? Why can't you be more like Nate? I hear it even when no one says it. I told him Claire never said that she loved him, that she's breaking herself trying to keep them both afloat. And then he snapped. Not in a big, dramatic way at first. Just this sudden switch in his eyes. Like a mask slipping. He stood up, walked toward me. You think you're better than me, he growled, poking me in the chest. You always have. Then he swung. Missed, thankfully. But he caught my shirt, tore it, and tried again before Marcus, bless his uncomfortable soul, tackled him from behind and pinned him to the ground. Darren thrashed, screaming about how I'd ruined his life, how everything was falling apart because of me. And that's when Marcus, of all people, spoke up. He said he couldn't keep covering for Darren anymore. He said everything Darren told our family was a lie. No career coach, no job interviews, no networking events. Just video games, booze, and casinos. Then he showed me the texts. Messages from Darren bragging about how Claire would never leave him. About how she was too scared to be alone. Too worried about what people would think. About how he could take cash from her purse while she slept, and she'd never notice, or if she did, she'd make excuses for him. I felt sick, and then Claire walked in, still in her scrubs, eyes red. She'd been tracking Darren's phone ever since he disappeared for 3 days last month. She walked in expecting, I don't know, a peace talk? A breakdown? Instead, she saw the beer cans, the gambling slips, Darren being held down by his best friend, and me standing there, stunned. She froze, and then, somehow, she turned on me. Started yelling that I was stalking them, trying to destroy their marriage. That Darren was only acting out because I'd crushed his self-esteem. That I needed to leave them alone. I tried to speak. Tried to show her the texts Marcus just showed me. She refused to look, said I probably faked them. Darren, who had just been trying to punch me minutes earlier, started crying. Full-on sobbing, saying he was lost, that he only drank because he felt worthless, that he wanted to be better for her. And Claire? She fell for it. Again. She wrapped her arms around him, glared at me, and told me to leave, that I'd done enough damage. I didn't argue. I just walked out. She followed me to my car, cold, not crying this time, just done. If you really love me, Nate, she said, you'll stop interfering. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, my mom called me furious. Apparently, Claire told her I showed up drunk, tried to provoke Darren into hitting me, and then fabricated evidence to ruin their marriage. None of that happened. But Mom believed her, said I needed to back off. And just like that, I became the problem. Then came the real kicker. 3 days later, I got a panicked call from Marcus. Darren was missing, vanished, took his stuff. Phone off. No one had seen him since Saturday night. At first, no one panicked he'd done this before, gone off the grid, reappeared hours later with a hangover and excuses. But then Claire noticed her credit card was maxed out, money missing from her wallet. Her emergency savings? Gone. She called me. No blame this time, just raw panic. We drove to every bar, casino, and sleazy poker den Darren ever mentioned, called hospitals, even reached out to his parents in another state. Nothing. And then a lead. Tom, the owner of the dive bar, where Darren was a regular, called me after checking his security footage. Darren was there Saturday night, drinking with 2 guys Tom recognized. Loan sharks. Not a metaphor. Actual, literal loan sharks. Guys who lend cash to desperate gamblers and break kneecaps when payments don't come through. The footage showed them leaving together, Darren looked nervous, but he wasn't being dragged. He went willingly. Claire and I went straight to the cops, but because Darren left of his own free will, they shrugged. Took our statement. That was it. Then Claire told me everything. The debt? Way worse than we thought. Darren had opened 3 credit cards in her name. Over $150,000 in debt. Pawned family jewelry. Wiped out their savings. And she'd known. She'd known for months. She didn't tell anyone because she felt ashamed. She thought she could fix it, that he'd change. That night, she got a call from a blocked number. A man with an accent said she owed $5,000. Or else, she was ready to pay, to drain her retirement fund. I stopped her, recorded the call, took it straight back to the police. This time, they took it seriously, set up a sting, and they caught them, the loan sharks, and Darren. Except Darren wasn't a hostage. He was working with them, recruiting other desperate gamblers, helping them launder money. He walked out of custody later that night after giving a statement. Free. Just like that. I wish I could tell you Claire finally saw the truth, that this was the moment everything changed. But she didn't. She blamed me. Said if I hadn't embarrassed Darren at the BBQ, none of this would have happened. Said I pushed him to desperation. Said I was the reason he fell apart. I didn't have a response. Not because I agreed, but because I realized something that night. Sitting in my car outside the police station. You can't save someone who's still building a shrine to their own delusion. You can scream the truth at them. Show them screenshots, bank statements, arrest records, and they'll still look you in the eye and say, "This is your fault." That's where Claire was, deep in denial, clinging to a sinking ship and blaming everyone who begged her to jump off. And me? I was drowning trying to save someone who didn't want saving. It happened on a Tuesday morning, just before dawn. I was sitting in my kitchen, watching the coffee drip into the pot, wondering if this whole thing had permanently destroyed my relationship with Claire. I hadn't heard from her in over a week, not since Darren got released, not since she told me flat out to stay out of her life. And then someone knocked on my door. It was her, Claire. No makeup, baggy hoodie, red eyes, and this hollow look on her face that scared the hell out of me. But something about her posture, maybe was different. She wasn't walking like she was carrying Darren's world on her back anymore. She was just Claire again. She came in, didn't even sit, just stood there by the counter and said, "I need to tell you everything." So I listened, and what she told me made my stomach twist into a knot. Turns out, she had been planning to leave Darren for months, way before the BBQ. She had a plan. She had everything: screenshots, bank statements, a journal logging dates and amounts Darren borrowed, photos of the pawn slips, credit card bills, even a burner email she used to talk to a divorce attorney. She was building a case, quietly, carefully. She knew Darren would fight dirty, so she prepared. She backed everything up on a flash drive. She was ready. And then, somehow, he found it. All of it. Every file, every note, every password. Deleted. Gone. Even her email account disappeared. He wiped it all before she could act. And that's when he turned the screws. Claire confessed that Darren had been blackmailing her. See, 2 years ago, during a brutal overnight shift at the hospital, one of her patients died. It was one of those freak medical things, an undiagnosed condition no one could have caught in time. The hospital investigated, cleared her. But after, she'd exchanged emails with a coworker, second-guessing herself, questioning if she missed something. Darren got a hold of those emails, twisted the wording, edited them to make it seem like Claire admitted to negligence. He told her that if she ever left him, he'd send them to the hospital board, the patient's family, even the state nursing board. She'd lose her job, maybe even her license. That's how he kept her quiet. That's why she defended him, why she stayed. Not out of love, out of fear. It was like a fog lifted. I could finally see it. Every denial, every excuse, it wasn't because she was blind. It was because she was trapped. She looked at me and said, "I didn't believe I deserved better. That broke me. But what changed? Why now?" She told me she caught him trying to hack into her work email. That was the final straw. She went straight to her hospital's legal team and showed them everything. The original emails, the edits Darren made, the threats. They backed her immediately, offered her protection, legal help, and full support. She filed for divorce that same day, and a restraining order. The momentum shifted fast. Her hospital referred her to a legal team that specialized in domestic financial abuse. These people did not mess around. Within 48 hours, all of Darren's access to her accounts was cut. They froze everything, tracked his spending, even subpoenaed bank records and phone logs. It turned out he had stolen over $180,000 from her over 2 years, maxed out every credit line, gambled it all away. Meanwhile, Claire moved into our parents' guest house. My dad, who finally saw things for what they were, had a locksmith change all the locks the day she moved in. Mom cleaned out a bedroom, turned it into a home office so Claire could focus on her case. They even installed cameras around the property. Darren tried to show up. Once, he was met with 2 security guards and a firm warning. If he came back, he'd be arrested. And finally, Claire stopped defending him. Now that everything was in motion, the truth started unraveling in layers. First, Marcus came forward. He gave Claire the texts, the receipts, the photos, everything. Then Tom, the bar owner, offered to testify about Darren's gambling, the loan sharks, the fake networking claims. Even Darren's old boss reached out. Apparently, Darren wasn't laid off like he told us. He was fired for stealing pharmaceutical samples and trying to sell them. His lies weren't just personal. They were criminal. Claire's lawyer filed charges for identity theft, financial fraud, and attempted extortion. The best part? All of it is backed by hard evidence. Screenshots, bank records, text threads, security footage. No more, he said, she said. Darren tried to fight back, started posting on social media long, dramatic rants accusing Claire of being abusive, manipulative, cold, said she destroyed a good man, tried to flip the narrative, but no one bought it. His own friends cut ties. Even his parents reached out to Claire to apologize. They said they were horrified, and they believed her. And Darren? He's unraveling. His lawyer dropped him after he showed up drunk to a meeting. The loan sharks may be in jail, but their friends are still calling. Apparently, Darren owes them a lot more than money. He's spiraling, and no one's catching him this time. Claire is healing. She started therapy. She's back to work, slowly. Her coworkers put together a meal train. They've been covering shifts when she needs time off for court hearings. They even left flowers on her locker with a note. "We've got your back." And me? We're talking again, not pretending like nothing happened. We talk like siblings who've been through a war together. She told me, "I was angry because you held up a mirror I wasn't ready to look into." I told her I was sorry I didn't wait for her to be ready. We both made mistakes, but the love, it never left. Yesterday, we sat on our parents' porch, the same one where everything blew up months ago. Claire held a mug of tea in both hands and said, "You were right, you know." I didn't say anything. She looked out across the yard, where Mom was planting something and Dad was fiddling with the grill. Then she added, "But next time, let me be the one to swing the hammer." I smiled. Fair enough. And we sat there in that soft silence. No shouting, no lies. Just 2 siblings, scarred but standing, finally breathing clean air again.